Welcome to Football Daily, where today we're bringing you the records which might be impossible to break in football. 10. The oldest goalscorer in World Cup history. The oldest players at World Cups are usually in between the sticks, like Dino Zoff, who won the World Cup at 40, or Farid Mondragon, who became the oldest player to appear in the competition in 2014, aged 43. But unfortunately, outfield players' careers tend to be much shorter, especially with the increased reliance on physical ability in the modern game. One man who defied that, however, is Cameroon's Roger Milla, who went to the 1994 World Cup as a 42-year-old. By this point in Milla's career, the striker had made 631 appearances and scored 358 goals at club level, and wanted to add to his 4 World Cup goals as well. The Golden Oldie did just that, netting a consolation strike against Russia in a 6-1 defeat, and headed straight for the corner flag for his trademark celebration. Surely a record that won't be broken anytime soon. 9. The quickest red card. Unsurprisingly, this coveted award wasn't picked up by Vinnie Jones, who could have seen red after 5 seconds against Manchester City, but it actually happened in the lower leagues of England instead, in a big match between Cross Farm and Taunton East Reach Wanderers. Lee Todd, who was Cross Farm's striker, was next to the ref when he blew his whistle for kickoff, and startled by the noise, muttered, "Fuck me, that was loud." The ref, doing his best Mike Dean impression, an impression of an absolute tit by the way, took offence to Todd's swearing and sent him off after just 2 seconds. The striker, needless to say, was baffled, protesting his innocence by saying that his comments weren't aimed at the referee, but did say that anyone else would have done the same, as the ref nearly blew his ear off. Turns out Lee wasn't a big miss though, as his side won 11-2 despite being down to 10 men for the entire game. 8. The youngest player ever. There have been some notable young debutants in football. Freddie Adu started playing for DC United at 14, and most recently Ethan Ampadu made his debut for Exeter City at just 15 years of age. But how about being chucked onto the pitch when you're a 12-year-old? In 2009, this is what Mauricio Baldavezo experienced in Bolivia, when he came on in the 39th minute for his league debut. Needless to say, at 12 years of age, you're not exactly physically imposing, as the youngster got kicked to shit by the Las Paz defence and left the pitch in tears. It might have been awkwardly quiet for dinner in the Baldavezo household, as it was his father who sent him on though. It's remarkable to think that as of 2016, the striker is still just 20 years old, and is currently playing for the Bolivian champions CD Jorge Wilstermann. Mauricio could end up having one of the longest playing careers in football history. 7. The most international goals. You would think with the ridiculous goal-scoring records of the likes of Puskas, Coxis and Poul Nielsen that the record for the most international goals would have been a relic from the 40s, although it's actually been standing since 2006, with Iranian Ali Daei reigning supreme. The striker had an international career spanning 13 years, clocking at 149 appearances and scoring 109 goals. Incredibly, this is 25 goals more than second place Ferenc Puskas, although the opposition Daei faced was hardly 1970 Brazil. Daei's record is boosted by a 5-goal haul in one match against Sri Lanka and scoring 4 goals in one match 4 times, although one of those games in fairness was against a respectable South Korea side. The most likely candidate to catch the Persian Pele is Neymar, who at just 24 years of age has 50 goals in 75 appearances for Brazil, but is still behind Daei's goal scoring rate of 0.73 per game. 6. The longest FA Cup tie. Until the 1990s in the FA Cup, there was no such thing as a penalty shootout, and instead matches would be replayed until there was an outright winner. The best example of this would be in the 1971-72 season, where Oxford City and Alvechurch played each other 6 times in the same round. A fixtureless nightmare, they had to face off 6 times in under 3 weeks, with 4 of the matches going to extra time. Alvechurch eventually won the war, but by the end of it the opposition players started to know each other pretty well. Bearing in mind that these players all had separate full-time jobs, those 3 weeks must have seemed like torture, and for the players' sakes, thank God this record can't ever be topped, as the rule change means that tied games go to a penalty shootout. 5. Most goals scored by a keeper. Goalkeepers have always had the stereotype of being a bit loopy, but there is a rare breed of stoppers who believe they have what it takes to do a job at the other end of the field as well. This isn't a new trend either, as George Kitchen in the 1890s and Imrich Stacko in the late 40s fancied themselves as penalty takers. but the likes of Higuita and Chilavert had even loftier set-piece ambitions, as they scored multiple direct free kicks, with the latter even bagging a hat-trick. But one man clearly takes the crown, and it's Rogério Senai. The Brazilian only played for Sao Paulo, scoring 131 goals. 61 of them were free kicks and 69 penalties, putting him in the top 10 goal scorers in the club's history. Senai hung up his goal-scoring boots in 2015, aged 42, but is back at Sao Paulo now as their coach. 4. The most goals in a match. There have been some massive scorelines in footballing history, for instance Arbroath beating Bonaccord 36-0 and Australia beating American Samoa 31-0, a game in which Archie Thompson bagged 13. But there's one that tops them all, and it's by a 3-figure margin. This happened in the ultra-competitive Madagascan League between rivals AS Adema and Olympic Lemra. But unfortunately it wasn't your typical drubbing. Instead it was a protest by Lemeran. The losing side felt they'd been on the wrong side of multiple refereeing decisions during the playoff tournament they were competing in. Instead of trying their hardest to battle through any perceived bias, they decided to blast the ball into their own net 149 times. That's an average of an own goal every 36 seconds. Typically referees add 30 seconds of extra time per goal scored, so technically there could have been 74 minutes added on if the ref wanted to torture the poor fans some more. As a result of this, multiple players were banned for the season, including the Madagascar national team captain. 3. The most red cards in one game. The record for the most red cards shown in a game within Britain is 5, which happened twice in the same year. These matches were between Chesterfield and Plymouth and Bristol Rovers and Wigan in 1997. Compared to the 5th tier in Argentina, these were relatively disciplined matches, as in 2011, a game between Claypole and Victoriano Arenas managed to result in a record 36 red cards. For this to happen, the ref had to send off both sets of players, the substitutes, and the coaches. It all became the result of a brawl on the pitch, as the game got feisty and referee Damian Rubino had a dissertation of a match report to write up after the final whistle. The two coaches had different accounts of the incident, with the Victoriano Arenas manager saying that they wanted to kill me, whereas Claypole's Sergio Maselli claimed that most players were acting as peacemakers and the ref was just confused. One thing's for sure though, the local FA must have been raking in the cash with the amount of fines dished out. 2. The most European Cups in a row. Since the European Cup became known as the Champions League, no team has won the elusive trophy twice on the bounce. But back-to-back wins were far more prevalent in the competition's old format, with 8 teams achieving the feat. Both Ajax and Bayern Munich have won it 3 times on the trot, but this isn't as impressive as Real Madrid's 5 in a row. This astonishing record was set from the competition's creation in 1955 to 1960, where Los Blancos beat Stade de Reims twice, Fiorentina, Milan, and lastly Eintracht Frankfurt, who they smashed 7-3 in Scotland. This was Madrid's greatest ever side though, featuring legends such as Alfredo Di Stefano, Ferenc Puskas and the mighty Paco Gento, who currently holds the title for the most European Cups won, with the Spaniard winning the trophy 6 times in 8 final appearances. 1. The highest attendance. With today's modern all-seater stadiums, the highest attendance in one match is unlikely to be topped, especially when that record stands as an official 199,854 people, who witnessed Brazil's loss to Uruguay in the 1950 World Cup final at the Maracanã. Despite the official numbers, the actual attendance is estimated to be around 210,000, with hundreds of thousands of Brazil fans excited as the Seleção needed only a draw to be crowned World Cup champions. But Uruguay and Gahiga snatched the winner with 11 minutes to go, and the Maracanazo is now considered a national tragedy. There have been a couple of times where football matches have come close though, most notably the Scottish Cup final between Celtic and Aberdeen in 1937, which drew a crowd of 150,000 people. North Korea's Rungrado Mayday Stadium can apparently fit 150,000, the highest capacity stadium in the world, but for some reason we doubt they'll be hitting the Maracanã figures anytime soon. So there we have it, but what do you guys at home think? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you click here for loads more great content and down there to subscribe. And as always guys, we'll catch you later.